Good evening and welcome to the Tuesday, October 8th, 2019 business meeting of the Olympia City Council. For the record, we have a quorum. All council members are present. At this time, I'd like to invite Carrie Retlin, who is our Home Fund Project Coordinator, to the podium to talk about some of the recent work that Council is addressing regarding tenant protections.
Good evening. Thank you for having me. I'm Carrie Retlin. I'm your Home Fund Manager. Each of you have been involved in scoping policy changes, considering new programs related to affordable housing or tenant protections in the last 6 months. Olympia has been impacted by the regional and national trends in housing affordability, as you all know, and our lowest income wage earners in our community are the most severely impacted. They can't keep pace with rising rents in Olympia or in Thurston County generally. Renters are now the majority of Olympia households at 53%. And like many of you, I've been hearing from renters in our community who are priced out of their apartments because of rent increases. And I've also been hearing from people who have been evicted so that their building could be renovated or rehabilitated. Eviction, of course, is a leading cause of homelessness in our community, both according to our local point-in-time count and from state and national data. So in May, Council approved a relocation assistance fund for tenants of the Angeles apartments. Those apartments had been sold, and as part of a repayment to their contract with a community development block grant fund that allowed us to partner with the Community Action Council to get relocation funds back to to all of the tenants in that apartment building. Unfortunately, few of those households were able to find rents that were even close to what they had been paying at the Angeles. In July, the most sweeping changes ever made to our state's Landlord-Tenant Act went into effect. Those changes are going to slow the rates of eviction around the state and provide more options for tenants who are seeking the ability to make payments on money owed to landlords. Olympia and lots of other cities have been exploring additional ways that we can support tenants. A few weeks before the Landlord-Tenant Act changes took effect, the Land Use and Environment Committee discussed almost 20 actions that Tumwater and other cities have been considering to add more renter protections to our code. In those conversations, many of the things that Land Use considered are on the docket that the Community Action Network is planning on bringing you tonight. So a number of you have already seen and considered a number of those requests for action, and we've talked about those in detail. On August 12th, the Land Use and Environment Committee hosted a special half-day work session to gather input from local affordable housing operators and market rate developers on how Olympia can fund more subsidized housing and incentivize more workforce housing. Chair Gilman and committee members directed staff to bring back some of those topics like multifamily tax exemption later this year. Land Use also met in September and considered changes to code so that we can quantify short-term rentals like Airbnbs and ensure that that doesn't hurt our long-term rental housing stock. General Government Committee met September 25th and considered relocation assistance program models. There's a number of different ways that other cities in our state and around the region have done that work. Chair Rollins directed me to come back to that group this fall with more specific recommendations based on work that Tacoma and other cities have recently implemented. That meeting also talked about next year's Community Development Block Grant Program, which we plan on bringing a focus on affordable housing investments like property acquisition. Finance Committee's most recent meeting in September discussed new revenue Olympia will capture on affordable housing construction and rent assistance. That's specifically going to focus on supportive housing, or is required to focus on supportive housing, but that's obviously an important component to all of this work. Chair Cooper has also been convening the Regional Housing Council, which is a new group that includes Thurston County and Tumwater and Lacey in addition to Olympia. Just last Thursday, that team discussed collaborating to develop a site for a special state housing trust fund competition. My understanding is that that grant announcement is going to post next week or the week after, and we'll know more about what we need to do to prepare an application for that process soon. Staff have also been taking a number of actions to reduce the cost of housing that either already has council approval or that we can do administratively. Just a couple of examples. Our legal team just today was working on documents related to our first affordable housing impact fee exemption. We received that application earlier this year, and we've been working on getting that to you this fall. Our economic development director has been working on pursuing a single room occupancy or micro housing proof of concept for Olympia, so that we can prove to the development community that that sort of development will work in our town. Our fire marshal, who you saw earlier tonight, has identified and implemented ways to reduce cost on construction costs that maintain public safety but still help reduce cost for construction. And planners in Olympia, as well as Tumwater and Lacey, worked together to put together a grant application for a regional housing needs analysis by income type. That research will bring together a whole lot of data that we don't currently have on our housing stock, our renters, our landlords in our community, both in Olympia and all of Thurston County. So that grant application was submitted to Commerce earlier this month. So to wrap up, here's what we're expecting, or that staff will be bringing council this fall and winter related to renter protections and affordable housing. Land use will be hearing tenant protections, multifamily tax exemption and other land use changes. General government will be hearing relocation assistance program, community development block grants 2020 focus on housing. Finance committee will be implementing 1406 revenue for new housing programs. And they'll also be reviewing budget for 2020, which will include contracts and budgets for homeless response services, in addition to some of the things I just mentioned. And then Regional Housing Council will be collaborating for that application for state housing trust funds and other activities like sanctioned tent encampment discussions that are ongoing. I'm sure there's a few things I missed. I'd be happy to come back in the future and talk more about them. Thank you.
All right, I've got a question from Mayor Pro Tem Bateman. Any other? And then Councilmember Parsley.
Thank you, Carrie. That was a lot. If you did miss any, we're doing quite a bit in a short time frame, so thank you very much for that and that work and all the work that all of our committees and subcommittees are doing. I just have one quick question. You mentioned the regional housing analysis. Is that the grant through 1923?
Exactly.
Okay, great, thank you. And when do we find out if we got that?
I don't remember. Leonard, are you giving me a signal? About 4 weeks from now.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Parsley.
It's just a question to put on your radar. When I was with Leonard at the Olympia School Board talking about impact fees, they seem to be willing to be open to a two-tiered impact fee for affordable housing. And the second tier would be for more of what we're calling workforce housing. Less of a tax or an abatement break compared to the low HUD level affordable housing. So I'd just like to put that out there because they also said that if the city did it, they might be willing to do it.
Great.
Good to know. I had a quick question about the regional housing analysis. So did you submit that application with the county?
The jurisdictions had to submit that. They submitted that together. So that application had to come from cities.
Got it.
So.
All right. Thanks for that clarification. All right. Thanks for bringing us up to speed on all your work.
Thank you.
Carrie. All right. I need a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We have an agenda. It's a very special agenda. We have 3 special public hearings this evening and 3 special recognitions. So these public hearings are special because they relate to ballot measures. And like I said, there are 3 of them. The first one's item 2A. And in accordance with RCW 42.1 17A.555, any action taken by the council to support or oppose a ballot proposition must be done at a properly noticed open public meeting with an opportunity for anyone to comment for or against the ballot measure prior to council action. So this is different than our public communications sign-up sheet where you aren't allowed to talk about ballot measures or candidates. So this is special public hearings. Since there's sometimes confusion because we don't do these very often, I will open it up to additional people if they find that they want to speak for or against a ballot measure. So this first one is on a resolution expressing City Council opposition to initiative measure number 976 related to motor vehicle taxes and fees. I have, sorry, here we go. At this point, I have one person signed up, and again, these are, you adhere to the same rules as public comment, so you have 3 minutes, countdown clocks over my right shoulder. So I have one person signed up, that's Kelsey Hulse.
Good evening. My name is Kelsey Hulse, and I'm here representing Puget Sound Energy. And in the interest of expediency, I'd like to express our support for all 3 of the resolutions that you'll be considering at the top of your agenda this evening. These resolutions, which support infrastructure investment, affirmative action, and investment in emergency communication systems, represent values and priorities that our organization share. So I just wanted to say thank you so much for your support, for considering these important initiatives, and that we're right there with you. So we appreciate it.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak for or against Initiative 976 related to motor vehicle taxes and fees? Is there anyone else? All right, I will now close that special public hearing on I-976. Is there any additional discussion from the council? All right, I have got Councilmember Parsley.
I was actually going to do a motion.
Yep.
Okay, I would like to motion that, where to go, to move to adopt the resolution expressing City Council opposition to initiative measure number 976 related to motor vehicle taxes and fees.
Second.
All right, so I want to clarify that's opposing I-976 from the council. I've got a motion, it's been seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion passes. Thank you. It takes us on to item 2B, which is another public hearing on a resolution expressing City Council support for the Thurston County 911 Emergency Communications Systems and Facilities Levy. I have, I guess now one person signed up that I will invite forward. That's Doug Ma. And I will open it up after this too.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the council. My name is Doug Ma. I live at 3718 Kinsale Lane, Olympia, Washington, 98501. I'd like to express my support and encourage you to support the resolution in favor of Proposition 1, which appears on the November ballot. The problem is pretty simple. TCOM needs to replace a 40-year-old analog emergency communication system with a digital system. Replacing it is about a $30 million proposition. TCOM does not have the funding to do this particular project without additional revenue. It's important that we fund the emergency radio communication system. This, not doing so, puts our citizens at risk, and it also puts first responders at risk. Again, I encourage you to support your resolution in support of Proposition 1 on November's ballot. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the room that would like to speak for or against the 911 Emergency Communications Systems and Facilities Levy? Is there anyone else? All right. We'll close that public hearing. Is there any questions or motions from the dais? All right. Councilmember Gilman.
I would move to adopt the resolution expressing City Council support for Thurston County Emergency Communications Systems and Facilities Proposition Number 1 levy.
Second.
All right. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Takes us to item 2C, another special public hearing, this one on a resolution expressing City Council approval of referendum number 88 concerning affirmative action. I have, looks like now just one person signed up for comment. I'd like to call that person forward, C. Davis.
Hello, my name is C. Davis. I could speak out on the deficiencies of R88, how it disenfranchises our veterans, unilaterally empowers the governor and his unelected diversity board to make preference decisions, and which will likely be used to give hiring and educational preferences to illegal aliens. Or I could speak out on the sponsors of I-1000 R88. Foster and Pepper, a mammoth Seattle law firm who gave $228,000 to R88. Or the convicted murderer, Gerald Hankerson, who is a co-chair of the I-1000 board. Or the $10,000, that many thousands of dollars that were given by big oil lawyer James Waldo. I could speak out in favor of I-976, which might be the thin line that saves hardworking men and women, taxpayers, from financial ruin, which will end irresponsible waste and spending on 19th century technology paid for with 21st century dollars. Or how light rail artificially destroys communities and destroys housing. But I see a bigger issue here. I see the issue being that a publicly elected body, who are by law to serve the whole community, would overstep their jurisdiction and force their personal agendas on the people that they are supposed to serve. Let me remind you that as city council members, it is your duty to serve the people who elected you, not to tell them how to vote. Abusing your positions as municipal leaders to influence and coerce voters on statewide initiatives is repugnant. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak on a resolution expressing City Council approval of referendum number 88 concerning affirmative action? Right.
Madam Mayor, if I were to speak on this, would
Oh.
I be allowed to speak under public comment if I really signed up? We allow one comment per tonight.
Yes, the public comment is regarding anything, regarding any kind of city business. These special public hearings are just regarding a ballot measure, and anyone can I'm opening it up to anybody to speak for or against. You can speak more than once. Are you all right with waiting? Okay, thank you.
There's somebody else there ahead of me?
You're up, Larry.
All right. I'm Larry Watkinson, a resident of Olympia. I was not going to speak on this tonight, but I'm going to. I was a signature gatherer for Initiative 1000. I live in a representative part of the country where our legislator sat down and took good testimony and good policy input. I represent people with disabilities. I represent in my day job women, minority, and persons who are trying to make opportunities for themselves and disadvantaged businesses, and that's what they do for a career. Initiative 1000 is not a token affirmative action. What it really says is that if we're underrepresented in the ability to provide a government service through contracting, or underrepresented in the ability to get an education, such as myself who lives with blindness and are well underrepresented in the educational system, it says to those facilities, thou shalt be able to create opportunities, if I'm qualified to do that, to ensure that I get those opportunities. So this is about business, this is about education, this is about government contracting, this is about us being whole as an inclusive community. I think it is your role as leaders to take leadership positions in the city where we live to be able to advise us citizens on where your values are. And I can think of nothing more than you guys voting to put Initiative 8 on the ballot and telling the citizens of Olympia, this is a good idea because inclusion for everyone is an important thing. That's a value of Olympia.
Thank you. Have an additional speaker. Can you get to the podium and introduce yourself?
Okay. I'm Allison Spector, and I am speaking in favor of this resolution in support that's supporting referendum 88. I think it's important to take a look at the historical context. When I-200 passed, state contracting percentages with minority and women-owned businesses was about 10%. Post I-200, that has fallen now to around 3% and hasn't budged since then. This measure is to rectify that disparity in our contracting. Same thing we've seen in our universities. Enrollment has fallen for certain persons of color, and this is referendum 88 I-1000 is to address that and to fix those disparities. It also wanted to clear up a couple of misconceptions. Referendum 88 bans preferential treatment. Preferential treatment is defined by Referendum 88 as that race can't be used as the sole quantifying factor. It instead allows more options for contracting and also emissions. And I hope this council supports this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would speak to this ballot measure specifically? Excuse me, I think your ballot measure we already voted on. Oh, yes. Okay, you want to come up and introduce yourself, and then there's another gentleman. 3
minutes. Wow. Well, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak on Referendum 88. It's interesting. It was the first initiative I co-sponsored was Initiative 200 21 years ago, and I was an abysmal failure at...
Excuse me, can you introduce yourself for the record?
Okay. My name is Tim Iman, and... Very good. So anyway, so the first initiative I ever co-sponsored was Initiative 200 on this exact topic, and I was an abysmal failure as an initiative sponsor. I didn't know what I was doing, is brand new to the process, and we eventually put it up for adoption, essentially, and ended up having other people ended up carrying it over the finish line. Now it's been 20 years, and we've had this same policy where the government treats everyone equally, and they can't give you different rules for different races. They got to treat everyone equally. That's been the process for the last 20, 21 years. And here the legislature overturned that and said, no, we're going to go back to the way it used to be. I think what is off-putting for a lot of people is to have their elected officials telling them how they should vote on a ballot measure. I think they find that somewhat off-putting because it is called the citizen initiative process. It's not the politician initiative process. It's the people that are going to make the ultimate decision. And in this case, it is literally the first thing you're going to be voting on in November is Referendum 88. And it's really important for people to understand that if you vote yes on Referendum 88, you're in favor of what the legislature did. And if you're voting to reject it, you're against what the legislature did. It's hopelessly confusing. I think it purposely so. So I think it's going to be an interesting debate. The other issue I wanted to bring to the council's attention is as you take a vote on it, please realize that your vote is no different than any other voters. You're a mayor, your city council members, you're used to having enormous amount of power and influence. When it's the citizen initiative process, you're just like everybody else. Your vote counts no different than anybody else's vote. Everybody else in this room is just as powerful as you are on it. So I think when you basically are telling people how to vote on it, people basically say, well, that's great. Why don't you do it on your own time? Why are you using our tax dollars to try and influence a vote that's supposed to be about the people? The initiative process, I think, is a very positive one. The voters ended up qualifying this initiative or this referendum for the ballot. It was a lot of work for a lot of people. The Asian community really worked their tails off, and I think they ought to be paid for the work that they did. And it's unfortunate that the people that are in favor of the I-1000 campaign will not pay them for the work that they did. It is ironic that they're called the Fairness Coalition when I don't think it's fair that people work really hard and don't get paid for the work that they did. So I appreciate your consideration, and I wish you hadn't shut off the opportunity to talk about the other ballot measure. So thank you.
Thank you. A point of order. I have the same rules for public hearings as I do for public comment. We ask that it be a safe and respectful space for all views, and you refrain from outbursts. You want to come forward and introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Emmanuel Flores. Do you need my address or?
You can state it.
1812 Cyrene Drive Northwest. So I just wanted to speak in favor of, it looks like you guys are going to be voting for approval for referendum 88. I'm a United States Air Force veteran. I served my term in, and I do appreciate that you are taking the opportunity to vote and voice your opinion. Mr. Iman is correct that when I go to the voter's box, it's going to be my choice. But again, I appreciate when people exercise their rights as either separate bodies or individuals to show support or opposition against things that they view. And I value the fact that you as a board are taking the time to go through the process, and whether you all disagree or agree, that you are voicing your opinion not only to the people but to the legislation. So again, thank you for going through this process. I support this as a veteran, as a Mexican Native American as well. Thank you again.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to speak for or against referendum number 88? Anyone else? Now close the public hearing, and I've got a hand raised over here by Mayor Pro Tem Bateman.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to wholeheartedly approve a resolution expressing City Council approval of referendum number 88 concerning affirmative action.
Second.
All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion passes. That takes us to special recognition this evening, and they are now numbered 3A, 3B, and 3C. So the first one that we have up is recognizing the Bridge Music Project and its partnership with our Parks Department. So I'd like to invite forward Luke Burns, or are you going to just have us watch first and then speak to it? Okay. Luke Burns from the City of Olympia's Parks Department, and Bobby Williams, the Bridge Music Project Director.
All right. Thanks, Mayor Selby, and thank you, Council, for having us here tonight. And I'm happy to be here tonight and talk about the great work that we've been doing. So I'm Luke Burns with Olympia Parks Arts and Recreation. I oversee teen and community programs. I'm also here tonight with Bobby Williams, the Executive Director of a local nonprofit, the Bridge Music Project, and Todd Fulton, a school counselor at Marshall Middle School. So as you might be aware, teens are generally an underserved demographic. As youth enter their teen years, parents no longer have to pay for childcare, and oftentimes the teen programming that does exist, such as select sports, theater, and so on, can be costly. When you introduce challenges such as the foster care system, experiencing homelessness, or incarceration, it can be near impossible to reach these youth. Today, I'm very proud to share the work that we've been doing with the Bridge Music Project. Here to tell you more is Bobby Williams.
Hello, I'm Bobby Williams. I'm the Executive Director of the Bridge Music Project. Thank you, Mayor Shelby and the Council for having me here. I'm very excited to speak with you today. So my goal for this is I want to explain a little bit about the work that we've been doing and hope you'll leave with a better understanding of this work and why it's important. So a little bit about us. We are the Bridge Music Project. We're a nonprofit organization based here in Thurston County. We work with youth to teach how music and writing can be used as tools to deal with life's challenges. So behind all of our work, that's the core idea. We currently have chapters here in Thurston County and in Grays Harbor. And between mid last year and mid this year, we've served around 170 youth through our various different songwriting workshops. We also named the Nonprofit of the Year by the Thurston Economic Development Council. So we work with youth who have experienced trauma, which comes in different forms. Many of the youth who participate in our projects have dealt with situations like being in foster care or experiencing incarceration or homelessness or behavioral health challenges, or might be in danger of dropping out of high school. So that's the youth that we're trying to reach out to with this work. We partnered with the Parks, Arts, and Recreation Department to create several new programs and expand our partnership this year. We hosted open mics at Rosie's Place. We continued for the 5th year our summer concert series. We facilitated a mentorship program. We created an album, and we did a songwriting workshop at Marshall Middle School. So I'll start by telling you a little bit about our open mic at Rosie's Place. This year we did 6 open mics at Rosie's. Rosie's is a youth engagement center and homeless shelter. And so a challenge that we have sometimes is how do we engage youth experiencing homelessness in this project? So our answer to that was to try to meet them where they were at. We had a lot of engagement and participation. I can tell just from youth that I see walking through downtown who approached me asking about when the next open mic is. They really appreciate these events, so I felt like we got a really good response there. Like I said, for the 5th year, we did our summer concert series. This is something we're very proud of. This year, we based most of the concerts out of Percival Landing. So this is kind of an opportunity for our youth to perform for a bigger audience and with more other artists. They perform alongside national and regional artists, and they get that experience. This is one of our youth from the Marshall Middle School program, and then Wisdom up there singing. And then one real highlight was doing our annual dance battle. We had 30 dancers from across the region come to compete in this, and so that was a lot of fun. Here's some more shots from the dance battle. This was one of our winners, and even the youth kind of were inspired by the dance battle, as shown by that picture. So we had collectively around 1,000 people came out to these concerts, and we had 6 events, and around 35 youth performed as part of the concert series. Here's some live visual art happening. Here's one of our youth, Amanda, performing. The next project I want to talk to you about is our mentorship program. This was intentionally a small-scale, intensive project. So youth met with mentors for 8 weeks. 3 of the 4 youth who participated were in foster care during the time of this project. And the idea was to promote mentor-mentee relationships. So a lot of youth that we work with don't always have a lot of positive adult role models in their lives, so this was something we were trying to promote with the connection of being interested in music and creativity. We did a 10-song album, so this was a very fun project. We recruited youth from all our different programs to come and be part of this project, and we facilitated an 8-week just ongoing recording workshop at the Capitol Theater in downtown Olympia. The Olympia Film Society is a strong partner of ours and allowed us to do our recording at their theater. We had a chance to work with Kid Sensation, who is a well-known rapper, frequent collaborator of Sir Mix-a-Lot's. He came and featured on the album with us. And we had a chance to collaborate with the Olympia Symphony Orchestra. And so members of the orchestra came and recorded on this album. And they even invited us to perform with them at their concert at the Capitol. So that was a real honor and powerful experience for our youth. And lastly, I want to tell you about the Marshall Middle School songwriting workshop. So this was an after-school program that we did at Marshall Middle. We worked really closely with staff and Todd, who is a school counselor, who I'll introduce you to momentarily, to identify who are the youth that could really benefit the most from this project. And so we did an 8-week collaborative workshop where youth work together as teams to write original music, sharing their stories. It concluded with youth creating a final recording of this music. And another highlight was that we got to work with the Grammy Award-winning artist Wands, who sings on the Macklemore song Thrift Shop. So he actually came to Marshall and presented for the entire school, and then sat in our workshop and shared some wisdom with our youth. And they got to have a dialogue, so that was really exciting. We concluded with it was an optional assembly, but more than 300 students came out to hear our youth perform and share their music. So this was kind of the final project of the workshop, and here's some of the youth performing here. So I'd like to introduce Todd Fulton. He is a counselor at Marshall Middle School who worked very closely with us on this project, who's going to speak a little bit about it.
Good evening. Thanks for having us. I was going to do a little freestyle rap, but Bobby reminded me I don't know how to do that, so I'll spare you. So yeah, thank you very much. Our mission at Marshall Middle School is to promote, establish, and maintain our students' social, emotional, academic, and physical well-being, and that's done with partnerships before, during, and after school. We can't do this alone. The City of Olympia and Bobby came in, and we immediately jumped all over this, identified the students that we thought would benefit from this, and it was amazing to see the kids change, their mannerisms in the hallways, their academic performance, and generally these are kids that may not be out in the forefront, and so through this project they were brought forward, and yeah, the lyrics were amazing. Hopefully we'll get to hear some of those this evening, but they dealt with personal experience, life traumas, and they met these head on. So working with the kids and Bobby, we were able to kind of work with outside therapists and kind of work through some of these issues, but it was amazing. And yeah, again, here, this picture, if you guys could take a look at it, that was optional. You know, we're performing, and if you want to come, the entire school came out. The entire school came out and witnessed this performance. I mean, I was blown away. Teachers, like, I didn't know they had these talents. And they were seen in a different light that day. So it's amazing what Bobby and Luke and the City of Olympia have provided us. So thank you very much. It's been a heck of an opportunity, so thank you. So, Bobby, yeah.
So I had a brief video I wanted to share with you. This is a video of a youth who's participated in the bridge for several years, and he's sharing kind of in spoken word a little bit of his story and his experience with the organization. So I just want to close with that.
The bridge. My words used to feel like they had no meaning. Left in the dust for no one to hear, the dust filled my lungs with anger and regret. I just want to breathe. Group home and alone, just me. With only the moon to talk to at night. Surrounded by so many people, yet I feel so alone. Be a man, they said. Men don't cry. Bottle it up inside. My words used to feel like they have no meaning. Trying to find my life, but it's all just fleeting. Anger and regret. 4 different high schools, 4 different lives, but one constant suffering that's eating at my mind. My words used to feel like they had no meaning. Then I picked up a pen, grabbed a sheet of paper, words flowing through the page like water in a river. The music was my lifeboat. From the water I rise, mind over matter. Rhymes to the rafters, on stage sharing my heart, and I found what I was after. Family, community, acceptance, friends. You will hear my voice. You will hear our voices. We are you. My words used to feel like they had no meaning, but my words have meaning. I have meaning. The bridge.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sorry. I just was like trying not to cry. That was beautiful. Thanks, Bobby. It's been a pleasure to work with you on a lot of projects, and I want to acknowledge too that Councilmember Gilman's on your board. What you've brought to our community, that transformative power of the arts, is just what you do, and so I can't thank you enough. Anything else? Mayor Pro Tem Bateman.
Thank you, and I'm sure Councilmember Gilman will have something to say as well. That was incredible, Bobby. The reach that you are now having with this organization, watching you grow over the years and continue this important work is just astounding to me, and I'm so proud. The partnerships that you're forming with Rosie's Place, with Marshall School, enables you to continue that reach and broaden it even more. And like you said, you couldn't do this alone, helping these students. Individuals that experience adverse childhood experiences and young people that have adverse childhood experiences that can impact them for a lifetime. And these mentorship programs, these relationships, these positive, fun, pro-social activities will change their lives. It will change their health outcomes and promote positive well-being. So thank you so much for this work, and I'm so glad that we could help support it. And I continue to hope that we can continue that in the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Councilmember Gilman, followed by Councilmember Parsley.
All right. Well, I'm so pleased that you're here tonight to make the presentation. And the thing I want to underscore is that our partnership with the Parks Department is both putting programming in front of youth who wouldn't otherwise access our programming, and it's also drawing a different crowd to events. When we have 300 people down at Percival Landing, and they're mostly people of color, and they're having a great time celebrating an evening, that's something I think we should keep doing.
Thank you. Councilmember Parsley.
Well, Bobby, you know how I feel about your project. I feel a little foolish because I'm sitting here and I watched this film and I watched the presentations, and I think I finally understand what the bridge project means. And I'm going to refer back to Mayor Pro Tem. You built bridges all over this community to help these kids. And not just our community, but Grays Harbor. Wow, amazing. I will always be a supporter of the bridge project.
You didn't mention the Seahawk connection either.
Oh, yeah. Last year we had a chance to connect with the Seattle Seahawks for the Legion of Youth Award, and they kind of acknowledged our work, and we had a chance to, get a video on the Jumbotron and have fun with the Seahawks. Another thing I wanted to mention is we have a community reception that's coming up on October 17th. This is kind of our annual fundraiser, and that's going to be at the Hub at Lacey. And so we'd love anyone, who's listening right now to attend, and we'd love to see you there.
Thank you, and thanks to the Parks Department for supporting this great programming. All right, we're moving on. Item 3B, special recognition of the newest addition to our downtown public art inventory, the Olympia Dragon Mural. So on August 24th, 2019, the Olympia Dragon Mural, located on the corner of 5th and Columbia, was dedicated at an event featuring speakers and performers. And I'd like to invite former Mayor Doug Ma to the podium to talk about how that project came to fruition. It definitely took a lot of partners and coordination.
Yes. Good evening, members of the council, Madam Mayor. Again, Doug Ma, former mayor. And first, I think this is kind of odd because it's special recognition, but really I'm here to thank the council for all that you have done to make sure that Olympia continues to support organizations such as the Bridge Music Project and other opportunities where we can embrace our youth and embrace the culture and embrace the arts. And so you definitely make that a priority, and I want to thank you for that. So this particular project has some pretty humble beginnings. Young artist, Evergreen College graduate student, or Evergreen College student, immigrated to this country at a very young age, learned about the history of the early Chinese Americans that settled here and made Olympia their home, and some of the trials and tribulations that they went through to make this their home. Olympia is an incredibly a place of incredible both diversity and embracing immigrants, and so that that's history and that story inspired her to capture her feelings about the immigrant experience in the form of a mural. In this case, it's a dragon mural on the corner of Columbia and 5th, or 5th and Columbia rather. The reason why I mentioned the Bridge Music Project and our support of the youth is really as a supporter of this project. One of the things that I found so important was that it was a young artist, never done anything like this, wanted to come and do something and give back to her community, acknowledge the history and the lessons that she learned. And so she came to a group of people in Olympia and said, hey, I have this idea. I've never done it before, but this is what I'm thinking about. And a small group of really dedicated volunteers helped her bring this project to life. And there it is. And so, in this summer, we dotted the I, the dragon comes to life. But really, it was both acknowledging the history we have in Olympia, but also saying, hey, if you have an idea in this community, if you ask people for help, this is a community that will come out and help you, especially if you're a person of color, especially if you're a person of youth. This is the type of environment where we make things like this happen. And I was reflecting on the Bridge Music Project because it was probably my first year on council when an organization came to us for CDBG funds. And I thought, wow, this is kind of a unique organization. It's kind of a unique sort of funky thing. And maybe we should provide a little bit of startup money or some monies to help them with their programs to reach out to youth. 20 years ago, that was Grub. And, Grub is an incredible organization, an incredible asset, just like the Bridge Music Project. They're all founded in kind of this funky sort of Olympia thing, helping our youth in our very own way. And so the Dragon Mural, not only does it highlight the immigrant experience, and I think it's an important experience for us to acknowledge and remember in this day and age, it also was a way of saying, I support a young person fulfill a vision and a dream that he or she, or in this case it's Mimi Nguyen, had for expressing her thoughts and her passion about a story that inspired her. So on behalf of the Olympia Dragon Mural Committee, I'm here to thank you, here to acknowledge the work that they did. It was a very dedicated group that raised money, helped organize, had to get the permits so we can block the sidewalk and all that stuff, but we really think that we've added something to the murals and the collection that we have of public art in this community. And like all the art we have in this community, it not only makes it a better place, not only makes it a more beautiful place, but it has a story that should resonate with all of us. And so on behalf of the committee, I want to present you with a limited print. Is upside right? Only 70 copies of this print were made, and so we'd like to gift one to the City of Olympia so that you can display it proudly and hopefully remember this little bit of art. Our hope is that the mural will stay in place at the corner of 5th and Columbia for at least 3 years. We have partnership agreements done up with the Downtown Association or the Olympia Downtown Alliance and others to make sure that the art stays in place and stays beautiful. But I'm happy to report, at least the last time I checked, nothing had happened to the mural itself. And I think that speaks volumes to the type of people that we have and the respect that we have in this community for art. So on behalf of the committee, I want to thank you and present you with this token of our appreciation. Oh, we got to do that.
All right. Well, I want to acknowledge Anna Schlecht in the back. Anything that happens with paint and murals in downtown, Anna is involved in. Thank you. Anyone else want to make some comments? Councilmember Jones.
Mayor Ma, I just wanted to thank you for telling this story. I was there at the dedication and heard the artists speak, and I think you've done a beautiful job of explaining to us the meaning of this mural and what's behind it and the various connections. So I just want to thank you for sharing that with us so graciously and helping us understand the meaning. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else? So if you don't know where 5th and Columbia is, it's the site of Hannah's across from Heritage Bank. That's the little landmarks there for you. All right. Thank you so much for taking the time out to share that story. All right, we're on to item 3C, which is also part of our special recognitions tonight. And this is a proclamation declaring support for the Land and Water Conservation Fund. And for some context, the Land and Water Conservation Fund was created by Congress 54 years ago and works to preserve the United States' natural and cultural resources and improving access to the outdoors in urban and rural communities. And I believe there's a Joshua Cheney here tonight. Joshua, would you like to come forward and explain the importance of this fund?
Thank you, Council, and thank you to everyone here. The Land and Water Conservation, as you mentioned, is our nation's most successful conservation program. It provides funding to help protect and preserve not just our beautiful parks and forests and waterways here in Washington State and all around the country, but also our important community spaces like skate parks, rec centers, and playgrounds, dog parks, and everything in between. The Land and Water Conservation Fund has never been fully funded. A lot of the money gets taken away to go to other projects, and often the money that's supposed to get isn't received entirely. And this is a major problem because as now more than ever, our public places are under attack and people are trying to take advantage of that and find ways to exploit the resources and take away everything that makes not only the state beautiful, but our country's beautiful places that allow us to escape the city and just get lost in the beauty of nature, and also the public places that help weave our communities together and strengthen the bonds between us as individuals. And so I would like to thank you all for issuing this proclamation in support of the Land and Water Conservation Fund. Being here in the state capital of Washington, what you all do here really sets the tone for the entire state, and other cities, counties, and hopefully other cities around the country will take notice and see that the work that we are doing here in support to protect our environment, and hopefully follow the initiative and the leadership that you have shown and take the action in their own cities. And hopefully our state senators will go back to the other Washington, the lesser Washington I call it, and help convince their colleagues to support this fund, because it's really important to help protect and preserve our beautiful public places for generations to come. And so thank you so much.
Thank you. And so Joshua, we're going to read a proclamation and then I'm going to give that to you to take this evening. I also want to acknowledge that our Congressman Danny Heck is leading the charge on this back in the other Washington too. So we have a proclamation and we've divvied it up, and I'm going to start to my left with Councilmember Cooper.
Whereas public lands in Washington and throughout the country are a treasure to Washingtonians due to their stunning beauty, wildness, recreation opportunities, and intrinsic value. And whereas protecting public lands is essential to preserving America's biodiversity, especially at a time when the UN has reported that 75% of all terrestrial environment has been severely altered by human action. And whereas 5.6 gigatons of annual CO2 emissions are stored in marine and terrestrial ecosystems, making the protection of lands an essential resource in local, state, and national efforts to fight global warming. And
whereas the Land and Water Conservation Fund, created by Congress 54 years ago, is one of the most successful government programs in preserving our country's precious natural and cultural resources and improving access to the outdoors in urban and rural communities. And whereas the LWCF has been a critical tool in creating, enhancing, and conserving national parks and historic sites, national wildlife refuges, watersheds, forests, wildlife areas, and state and local parks, trails, and ball fields, all of which are essential to the people of Washington and our health, culture, economic opportunity, and the future of our children and grandchildren. And whereas over the last 54 years, LWCF funding has preserved and enhanced public lands that are critical to Washington and Olympia, including Capitol Lake Park, Woodruff Park, Yager Park, Percival Landing North, Mount St. Helens National Volcanic Monument, Nisqually National Wildlife Refuge, Olympic National Park, and Mount Rainier National Park, among other federal projects. And
whereas sustained stewardship requires funding, and the Land and Water Conservation Fund takes a portion of royalties from offshore oil and gas development and invests that money in protecting America's important public lands for future generations, be that an iconic national park or an urban playground. And whereas, while the Land and Water Conservation Fund is authorized to receive $900 million annually, this threshold has been met only twice during the program's existence. And instead of being fully funded, nearly every year, substantial sums of funding are diverted to non-conservation related projects. And
whereas despite receiving only a fraction of its intended funding over the last 54 years, LWCF has led to the protection of land in every state, has improved access to these public lands, and has provided matching grants for the creation of more than 500 state and local park projects in Washington. And whereas hunting, fishing, camping, hiking, paddling, and other outdoor recreation activities contribute $26.2 billion annually in consumer spending to Washington's economy and support 201,000 jobs, which generate $7.6 billion in wages and salaries, and produce $2.3 billion annually in state and local tax revenues. And
whereas Washington has received grants totaling in $76.2 million from LWCF, and whereas the parks, trails, and recreation projects dependent upon LWCF funding are green spaces that contribute to the health and well-being of Washington families. And
now therefore be it resolved that the Olympia City Council does hereby proclaim complete support for the full and permanent funding of the Land and Water Conservation Fund and urges Congress to vote to permanently and fully fund the Land and Water Conservation Fund, given the important contributions it makes to our nation's and Washington's health, well-being, economic opportunity, and access to our nation's natural treasures. Signed in the city of Olympia, Washington, this 8th day of October, 2019, Olympia City Council, Cheryl Selby, Mayor. All right, so that was quite the special opening of a council meeting for sure. We've got now more specialness. We've got our public communication portion of the evening's agenda, and so I just want to remind people that if you signed up on this sign-in sheet that you have read the rules around public communication. Mostly we have so many upcoming public hearings on this list, and so those are items that you can't speak to or ones that we've held public hearings on in the past 45 days. If you didn't have a chance to memorize this list, I'll just gently remind you if you go into one of those topics. We have just a few more than 10 people signed up, so I'm hopeful that we can get through that list within our first 30 minutes of time allotted for public communications. Just to remind people, there's a countdown clock over my right shoulder, and then we ask that people be respectful of everyone's views and that there be no outbursts. So to get through this list quickly, I'm going to queue up 3 people at a time. If you can stand here behind the microphone so that we can get quickly to the microphone, we can get through this list. All right, I'd like to start with Larry Watkinson, followed by Mary Watt.
Larry Watkinson, citizen of Olympia. In 1981, I moved to this town when I was 21 years old, and we had a 3-council member, all-male council, and we were over in the roundhouse off Plum Street. Hopefully it becomes a courthouse. We then had leadership that turned us into a city council manager's form of government, led by the League of Women Voters. We had council members, the original council members, some of them Holly Gadbaugh, Gil Carboni, Pete Knittel, lots of folks that were on that council, Joan Barnes, a whole bunch of folks, Dave Scramstead and other folks were on that council. And they made the wise wisdom to hire Dick Cushing as the city manager, who was one of the city managers, who then hired this young buck as an assistant city manager named Steve Hall. And Steve Hall was an assistant city manager, and where Dick Cushing was kind of boring at times, Steve brought life to the party. And when Dick decided to retire, I said to Holly Gadbaugh at the time, if you guys don't hire this man as city manager, you're really going to break the continuity of the stewardship of this city going forward as an organization. And I've watched this city council grow in culture. I've seen the city council grow in inclusion. And I see you guys struggling now, where staff sometimes don't feel with some of the motions made to appreciate some of the work. And I know behind the scenes you do appreciate the work. On a personal level, I watched Steve Hall grow from an assistant manager, assistant city manager, to a manager. He's had to put up with my crap. And let's talk about that a little bit in this sense. When I was involved with Lake Fair, Steve was feeling a little broke, and he was trying to gouge Lake Fair. Still think that, I can't say gouge, I mean that in a loving way, because Steve imposed some of the fees that he had to based on city council guidance, based on budget priorities, and we had to start paying for some of those things. Steve, though, was very humble about that, and it's not what he wanted to do, but our city coffers had to do that, and I'm one of the Capitolarians who appreciate. Now, Mary Shelby, can I take you up in the offer? You said when we were talking about Steve, you might let us go a little over. You said it in the paper.
You know, Larry, there's going to be many opportunities to celebrate Steve coming up that you'll have a chance to share
Can
more
I get
stories.
2 more minutes and I'll get there?
You know what? It's really, really difficult because
Okay.
I've got a full group here that have signed up, and I just...
Not a problem. I just want to say
Thank you.
thank you, Steve. You've done a great job, and I appreciate what you've done for this city.
All right.
Thank you, Larry.
Thank you, Larry.
I appreciate it.
You bet, you bet. All right, I've got Mary Watt, followed by Allison Spector.
Yes. Hello, my name is Mary Watt, and I was born in the old St. Pete's Hospital back in the day. And then when I was about 34, I moved to Arizona to get my master's degree, and I more or less just stayed there. And now I've come back to Olympia in 2016 after staying with my family for a bit. And I've had to move 4 times in the last 5 years because I usually have to rent from someone who has a room available in their house. I figured out that's the cheapest way to go. They don't ask a lot of deposits, sometimes none, sometimes, $200, $300, $400 maybe. So it's actually doable, especially if they will let you pay over time, which private landlords often do. And but it's not always the best situation. I was used to living alone my entire life in Tucson with my dog or my cat, whichever I had. And so coming here was kind of a shock, but I really wanted to be back in Olympia. And so I would end up living with someone, like I shared, you meet someone, talk to them a bit, maybe meet them again, and you think, well, maybe this will work. So I lived with a woman, and she seemed okay, and but she had unfortunately taught her dog, whom I loved, but she taught her dog to bark constantly. So I really wanted to get out of there. That was not a fun situation. I couldn't have people over, and she kind of occupied the family room. Anyway, long story short, who I'm really concerned about now is my sister. She is 75 years old. She was living in a property off 36th Avenue at Cooper Point area. And it was 26 duplexes there, and 2 and 3 bedroom. And it was pretty nice. And she'd been there about 10 years, I believe. And she's living on Social Security plus a little bit more. Well, that entire property was finally sold and bought by developers. And her $850 rent is going to $1,400. And I find that, I know they can charge that. You can charge $1,400 for a 2-bedroom because that's what a 2-bedroom apartment around here costs. But I don't know where she's going to go. We have family, but they either have children or they have roommates. And I don't know what she's going to do. I don't think she understands how difficult it's going to be in that market. So I thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Allison Spector, followed by Callie Owens, followed by Esther Sievert.
Hi, I'm Allison Spector, and I'm a resident of, and I work here in the city of Olympia, and I am testifying about the attacks against businesses about a week ago for simply having displayed the pride flag. I am testifying today to implore this council to take deliberate and visible steps to really reassure the LGBTQ plus community that this is a safe community for us to live and work. I know this council is very supportive of the community, and I just am hopeful that the council could really take some very visible steps to assure us that whoever committed these hateful acts can be brought to justice. And thank you for your time.
Thank you. Callie Owens, followed by Esther Sievert, followed by Becky Hayes.
Hello, my name is Callie Owens. I am a single mother raising a teen on the spectrum. He's here with me tonight. When we first came here in 2006, I was in a domestic violence situation, and I'm glad to be out of it. We had a couch to sleep on, 4 suitcases. My son was 4 years old. I had $230 in my bank account. And within 2 weeks, I had a job. We used public transportation. We were unable to get many state services, but I was able to get childcare. So I'm grateful for that. I had to work very, very hard in order to get where I'm at right now. I know that my son and I are one of the lucky ones. It took me several years to get on Section 8 housing. There were so many years that I had to pay over half of my income in rent just to make it, just to survive. I was also paying the $50 late fee every single month without fail. When I finally got on housing, my worker told me that I should have been on housing because I was paying over half of my income in rent. Currently, my son and I are both on disability, so we make very, very limited income. We're quickly outgrowing our 2-bedroom, 1-bath unit. He needs his own bathroom. I need my own bathroom. I'm going to be making some arrangements to be getting some reasonable accommodations. Currently, I'm unable to rent outside. The housing authority is capped out at my housing voucher. With the increased rents and the rising costs, it is very, very difficult for me to be able to get a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house that I need with a yard for my son to be able to run free in the backyard like he wants to, because I can't get that on my voucher. Oh, for my voucher, it's like $1,000. It's near impossible to find a 3-bedroom or even a 2-bedroom, 2-bath house for that price. I love this city. I didn't know hardly anybody here when we first got here, but I love this city. We have made it our home, and it just breaks my heart to see the homeless situation. It hurts my heart. Thank you.
Thank you. Esther Sievert, followed by Becky Hayes, followed by Emily Evans.
I'll get this out of the way. I'm nervous. My name is Esther Sievert. I'm 66 years old. I've been clean and sober for 34 years. And the reason I share that is because I've lived here since 1966. I grew up here. I went to school here. I went to college here. I've worked here, and I volunteered in this community. And because of what's going on with the high rents and stuff, I become homeless. And in my active addiction, I never lost everything. I always had a place to live. And today I've had to get rid of, sell everything that I've worked so hard to get. And so I was couch surfing, And fortunately, I ran into a really good deal on a motorhome, so now I have a motorhome. It does leak, so I got to get it fixed. And thank God to this trailer park that let me move in without any deposits or anything. Otherwise, I would be living in my car. And, you know, my landlady, I knew her forever. I always paid my rent on time. I was always a good tenant. And I didn't realize I was on a month-to-month. And when you're on a month-to-month, all they got to do is give you 20 days to move. And she gave me a notice that I needed to move, and she had a lawyer, and she said she didn't have to tell me why I was having to leave. You know, they want you to make twice your income or twice your rent in income. I'm on Social Security, disability, and retirement. I can't do that. They want, you know, deposits first month, last month, you know. It's crazy. And, you know, I called the governor's office and I talked to his aide, and he said, well, I'll have someone call you. And the guy called me. He goes, well, you'll need to find some low-income housing, you know, and gave me a list. I don't qualify, you know, so it's been a real struggle. And, you know, like I said, I've worked in this community. I had a really good job. I was a corrections officer and a mental health and drug and alcohol counselor at Thurston County for 20 years. And I fractured my back at home and had to retire and go on Social Security. But I've continued to volunteer in the community. And, yeah, I don't even know what to say. It's really hard when you don't know where you're going to sleep or where you don't have an address or any of that stuff anymore. You know, I'm fortunate, like I said, the place that let me move in, but something's got to change. You know, something has got to change, and so I'm sorry. Anyway, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Excuse me, point of order. The podium is still at Luke Burns' height.
Oh, thank
And
you.
so folks are struggling to
Yes.
get there. Thank you.
Good point of order there. Thank you, Councilmember Gilman. Becky Hayes, followed by Emily Evans, followed by Jennifer Wolf.
Hello, I'm Becky Hayes, and I represent several groups who struggle and are growing in housing crisis. I'm 60 years old, therefore a senior. I'm disabled and only bring in $820 a month to my budget to meet my housing and life needs. Therefore, I represent the below poverty line income. With no cause evictions on the rise, out of control rising rents, and little to no affordable housing being built, while there seems to be an explosion of new and much more exclusively expensive apartments popping up everywhere in our country, or in our county, excuse me, I and my neighbors have been left behind with no choices, no chance, and at the mercy of the landlords and the managing companies. I have witnessed tenants being talked down to rudely, blamed for pest problems that clearly existed for years, and they did not disclose those issues to the tenants before they moved in. Denied basic services, all with the attitude of complete disregard and simple caring in the safety and general well-being of anyone living in some of their poorest buildings. These tenants are being intimidated into incurring more and more costs and staying in their apartment, and under the threat of being evicted and getting nothing but a bad place to live in return. Many find that they have nowhere to go when these abuses go on. We must prove that they're doing this, and it is just not that easy when the balance of power and caring is stacked against them. Why is this treatment going on unchecked? Because they can and they get away with it. We get labeled crazy or just as a troublemaker, a complainer, or even as a criminal if we stand up for ourselves and our neighbors. My neighbors are afraid that they too will become homeless and therefore do not stand up for themselves or lodge a complaint. They may feel it's unfair, but they cave under the demands of the landlord and the managing companies. I was raised to believe what is right, what is wrong, and you fight to change the wrongs. We need your help. We need drastic changes in the balance of the power of the housing issues. We need rent control. Take the 20-day no cause off the books. Develop more low-cost housing. Create move-in payment fee plans.
Thank you.
Thank
You can also, for the record, you can also submit your comments over to Kelly, and she will print them out for us as council members. So we'll get them as emails. All right, Emily Evans, followed by Jennifer Wolf, followed by Danae Rosen.
Good evening. My name is Emily Evans, and I live in West Olympia. I'm here to talk about moving costs for apartments. According to the Thurston Regional Planning Council, the average rent in 2019 for a one-bedroom apartment in Thurston County is $1,059. When you sign a lease agreement, you are required to pay several fees: first month's rent, last month's rent, security deposit or administrative fees, an application fee, and a pet deposit, which is usually $300 per animal. And in my case, they charge an additional rent every month for your pet. So for that $1,059 apartment, you're looking at approximately $2,800 minimum in move-in costs, which doesn't include any of the other costs associated with moving, like renting a truck. This is an issue that is affecting me directly. My partner and I are both college educated and currently live in income-controlled apartments. We were told when we moved in that we had barely made the income cutoff. I was only making $14.50 an hour, and I was the only one working. We were also penalized for our meager savings and 401k contributions. This February, I was laid off of my job of 7 years and went on unemployment while trying to secure another position. After an annual exam at Planned Parenthood in March, I was told that I had ovarian cancer and would have to have a complete hysterectomy with 6 weeks recovery time, which turned into 3 months for me. Thankfully, I'm cancer-free now, but during that time, I had no income coming in, as unemployment won't cover you if you are not available and able to work, and there is no short-term disability through the state. I just accepted a job offer this past week, and it will pay more than my previous wage. However, I am supposed to notify my apartment management immediately of any changes in my income. After I notify management, I will have 30 days to vacate my apartment. My partner and I have used all of our savings and have racked up significant credit card bills while I was recovering. How am I supposed to come up with $2,800 for move-in fees in 1 month while still paying my bills and feeding us? My partner and I consider ourselves lucky. This can happen to anybody, and my story isn't the worst I've heard. We were fortunate to have nearby family as a support system, or else we may have added to the already large homeless population. According to the National Low-Income Housing Coalition in Washington, you have to earn $27.78 an hour to afford a 2-bedroom apartment. If you are earning Washington's minimum wage of $12 an hour, you have to work 93 hours per week to afford a 2-bedroom apartment. Even with 2 people working full-time, that's over 30% of their income, which is the generally accepted rate for housing costs. Most people pay more than that. How can anybody save to move in this situation? I urge you to enact rental protections to give people the ability to pay their move-in fees on a payment plan.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jennifer Wolf, followed by Danae Rosen, followed by Linda Ann Moniz.
Good evening, Council. My name is Jennifer Wolf, and I'm a resident of downtown. In 2015, I became disabled after a workplace injury. Then, shortly after that workplace injury, my husband and I lost our home. We stayed with some friends over a period of time, so we were not on the streets. We technically weren't counted in the statistics of homeless, but we definitely were homeless. It was very clear to us that that was not our home, even though we had a roof over our heads. Thankfully, my husband had an okay job, and we were able to save some money for a month of rent and a meager deposit. But we were definitely struggling, and we were applying for all the places in Olympia that would take us. Thankfully, we found a place, even with the very low vacancy rates, that would let us have a payment plan. It was just a local landlord that likes to help out his tenants. And so we were able to pay the other portion of our deposit and our last month's rent over a 6-month period of time. And now we've been there for 3 years, and we love where we live, and we plan to stay there for forever. Honestly, we live downtown. I don't plan on leaving. We love it, and we love living in Olympia, and we love living downtown. And if we hadn't had that opportunity to make that payment plan, I don't know where we would be. Clearly, I'm still disabled. I still have mobility issues. And I feel grateful that I had that opportunity and that we were able to make that payment plan. I still struggle with having, I need that kind of help. And so I think that enacting payment plans across the board is something that will help. We were homeless. We were in those statistics, and with our housing crisis right now, that's something that it helped me, and it can help other people in our city. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Danae Rosen, followed by Linda Ann Moniz.
Good evening. My name is Danae. I grew up here, and I love Olympia. 2 weeks ago, you proclaimed October to be Walk to School Month. In light of what you've allowed to happen to this city, I don't know how you could have done that with a straight face. There are 74 transient high-risk sex offenders out on our streets. That's disgusting and totally unacceptable. So is all the toxic waste, biohazardous material, and garbage in our local environment. The jungle on Martin Way is just one example of an ecosystem completely destroyed. The wetlands back there are now a literal landfill of human feces and drug paraphernalia. Hypodermic needles do not biodegrade. You talk about a climate crisis, but these needles are everywhere because the city freely hands them out. They're in our forests and in our waterways thanks to these camps. I mean, the 4th Avenue camp is directly on our water. Why are you ignoring the elephant in the room? We have a drug crisis, and as you can see tonight, the truly needy are missing out and being cast by the wayside while you perpetuate and encourage criminal addictive behavior. Why isn't the Olympia Police Department allowed to test those syringes for drugs? Why can't the towing companies remove hazardous vehicles like that Suburban on Pear Street without city permission? Why is no one tracking the housing status of repeat offenders? Why was the 24/7 sobriety fund quashed a year after it began? Why won't you mandate sober housing programs and make medically assisted treatment a requirement of those programs? Thurston County's 5-year plan to end homelessness is a 50-page document. It mentions the word drugs 6 times. Yet this same document includes a survey done by Interfaith Works, which this plan itself states is the most accurate information gathered on the homeless population that didn't come from those enrolled in a county program. And according to that report, 67% of the homeless using those services have a substance abuse problem. I would suggest looking at Camilla's house in Florida as an example of what we could do on McNeil Island, a one-stop shop for shelter, triage, drug treatment, mental health treatment, housing, job training. We need this more than Thurston County needs a new $300 million courthouse. That money would go a long way. This once proud and beautiful city has become a zombie wasteland. You guys have given the homeless just enough compassion to keep them alive. Our streets at any given time of day or night are overrun with the staggering undead, flailing around, half-clothed, spitting, shouting, stealing, and defecating in the streets. This is the capital of Washington State as well as the county seat, and it's high time that you guys started treating it as such. Thank you.
Thank you. Point of order, I'm going to ask that you refrain from outbursts in the chambers. Thank you. Linda Ann Moniz, followed by Sarah Stockholm, followed by Jubert Barrios. Good evening. I can't find my picture. Anyway, thank you. I'm just here to express my concern. Sunday afternoon, I'm coming home, and there's an RV camper towed in my neighborhood right across the Orla Academy, a school. I called 911. My neighbor called 911. I called parking services. She has called parking services. And they have yet to assess the situation. This RV, the license plate is in the back window, and you only can see barely a little bit of it, 2 numbers. Who knows if it even belongs to that RV? I'm just here because I know that our Capitol Lake is full of them. And now it's coming into my neighborhood. Now I have to look at it when I drive to work and home from work. I already have to travel Wheeler. I don't have to travel Wheeler. It's a shortcut. I lock my doors. I leave my windows rolled up. Anyway, I just wanted to say that we need to start making small, little baby steps. If anything, the 4th Avenue Bridge, clear it out, little baby steps to start showing that we love the city. We love Olympia. We have a group that we just love Olympia, and we love the people of Olympia. And I don't know, just thank you. Please, I'm going to have to ask you to leave if you cannot refrain from outbursts. That's the cardinal rule about public comment, is that you cannot support or deny with, or support or not support somebody with shouting out or clapping. This needs to be a place where everyone feels safe to get up there at that microphone and say what they feel. It may be uncomfortable for some of us, but we have to listen. That's what we do. So I'm going to ask for your support in that. Thank you. Jubert Berrios. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Sarah Stockholm, followed by Jubert Berrios. Sorry.
Hi, my name is Sarah Stockholm. I'm a renter here in Olympia and a community organizer with Washington Community Action Network. You've heard a lot of people speak about their experience as renters here in Olympia, about the need for more affordable options to move into housing through move-in payment plans. And I think that we can all agree that most of us are working hard to make a better future for our loved ones, but times are tough, and sometimes we're unable to make ends meet. And Washington's housing, the rising cost of housing here and the lack of tenant protections only further this collective anxiety that so many people in the room tonight are feeling. We know that those of us who need the most housing support are left hoping to receive anything more than a sympathetic nod from our underfunded social services. And that statewide, there are only 29 affordable and available rental units for every 100 renter households with extremely low incomes. Locally, we're seeing more of our family members, our friends, and our neighbors lose their affordable housing after it is sold to a new owner who wants to raise the rent or flip the property. We also know that Olympia is rent burdened, with over 50% of our renters devoting more than 30% of our income each month to pay for our housing. And we know that people of color, seniors, single-parent households, and individuals or households with disabilities are the most likely to be rent burdened. But the price of rent is only one obstacle to housing. If we're lucky enough to find something we can afford and make it through the expensive rental applications, we're still expected to have anywhere from $2,000 to $5,000 to pay towards first month's rent, last month's rent, the security deposit, and a number of other non-refundable fees. These upfront costs impact Black, white, and brown low-income families, LGBTQ folks, seniors, people with disabilities, and those paying with alternative sources of income like Section 8 or Social Security. Capping the amount of fees that can be charged when moving in, as well as creating payment plans for the initial move-in expenses, will ensure our community members can afford to access housing. Tonight, I have legislation in my hand that I'd love to pass to all of you that was drafted by Columbia Legal Services. It's similar to ordinances that have been passed in Seattle and Tacoma that other non-chartered cities can enact. And in Burien, thanks. We just want you to know that this legislation is being supported by tenants, homeowners, and homeless people, and we're here in unification, asking for a move-in payment plan ordinance. As we come together across race, gender, and class to make Olympia a place for all of us, we want to know if you're going to join us.
Thank you. Jubert Barrios. Joubert?
Yes, hello. My name is Juba Barrios, and basically I live at the Olympia Apartments at 519 Washington Street. Basically, I moved in there a year ago. Basically, when I moved in, I was basically forced to give up my own money as a deposit. They wouldn't wait 1 or 2 days for my counselor to actually give me the check to do it. And then basically, the manager didn't even do a walk-in with me. I basically went to the bank. I got everything. I put it down, then I went to go see the place. I did the walkthrough myself. The window did not close for over a year. I just got the thing closed to go, basically close 3 days ago. The heat was finally turned on 3 days ago. I mean, I don't understand. I mean, me, myself, I got a lot of broken bones on my body, and I understand that the electricity is free, but most heaters cost at least $50 or $100 if you want a good one. You want it to last. My other issue is basically with the things here is that you guys don't have a rent board. You guys got to get serious about this, because if I'm a land owner of a building and I got tenants, guess what? I could live all the way at the edge of the Washington State. You know where I got to go to do a small claims court? I got to go to where he lives. It shouldn't be that way. Any landowner should have to come to the county where that property is owned. Why should there be undue expenses on low-income people when it's not necessary, when all these rich people got all these houses and everything, and they can afford to fly down or drive by, you know? Yeah, I don't get this. Another thing, the building inspectors and health inspectors, the rules and regulations that they got, their fines are a freaking joke. Most landowners, you know, say, hey, forget about this. I'll let it go. You know, $50, $100, $200, ain't nothing. You guys got to raise that to thousands. You got to make them accountable, okay? The other thing is, there's a roommate law in San Francisco, okay, which basically states, I'm basically a tenant, okay, and I'm having trouble paying my rent, so forth. I could bring in a roommate without having the landlord, management, or anybody increasing my rent. I want you guys to get on that. The other thing, with basically management corporations that basically manage housing and HUD and all that thing, you guys need to get individual inspectors in there. I'm serious. I mean, I've been living over there with the open window for over a year, you know, and then there's mold, mildew issues, there's roaches, there's ants, there's all kinds of stuff. And this is a historic building. I mean, it shouldn't even be in that shape. I mean, you guys really got to get on this. And for me personally, I feel very emotional, and I don't want to say anything else because I'm a loud shout out at you guys. Bye-bye.
Thank you. I appreciate that. All right. That concludes our public comment period for this evening. I want to just reiterate the frustration that we're feeling in this room across all parts of the housing spectrum, from people that are unhoused to people that are rent burdened or at risk of being unhoused. I feel that when there are outbursts, it's sincere, but I just really feel that that's the way that this room needs to be managed. It needs to be managed with respect for everybody's views. And so I shouldn't have to remind somebody 3 times that they shouldn't be clapping or shouting. So I hope that we can go forward with respect with everyone's statements and opinions. So that, anyone have some comments? I will start with Mayor Pro Tem Bateman. I'm sure we'll go down the roll, then I'll go to Councilmember Jones.
Thank you. I just first want to start off by thanking everyone who stayed tonight to give public testimony. It's a long meeting. It's a long night. I know that coming to council probably isn't the first thing you all thought of doing today, but we really appreciate your voices and the fact that you're here to tell them. We have been focused tremendously on the symptoms of this affordability crisis, being people that are unhoused in our community, and this is an opportunity for us to hear from tenants that are living in really just really horrible conditions. I mean, it's painful for us to hear the stories of individuals that are struggling day in and day out just to get by. You know, the woman who came and talked about having worked in our community, lived here 64 years of sobriety, I think you mentioned, not knowing where you're going to sleep at night, that instability, that insecurity of not knowing. I actually know what that feels like, and I feel for you. As our city staff mentioned, 53%, we have 53,000 people in Olympia, and 53% are renters. We are the only renter majority city in Thurston County, and 50% are cost burdened. I've talked to individuals that have lived here and are renting and are afraid that their landlord is going to increase their rent to the point that they're going to have to move. They love their community, they love being here, they're an asset to our community. And we're talking about this impacting young people, seniors, working professionals, people that have lived their lives here, contributed taxes to our community. This, you know, it's painful for me, and I think it's shameful for us to be in a situation where these are the stories that we're hearing from people. I mean, to think where we are in 2019, and these are the challenges that real people are facing. We have the opportunity here to make changes. We don't have all the control. For instance, rent control, that's a statewide issue, and I know that that was an issue that came before the legislature last year, and I know there are advocates in the legislature that will be bringing that forward this year. For individuals getting 20 days notice to vacate their home, I bought my home 2 years ago, and my neighbor was given a 20-day notice with their family. One of their children was on the spectrum. Finding out where they were going to get into a school, whether they would get in the same school district, the stress that put on that family. And that was because they wanted to have a relative move into that home, which is completely legal, even with just cause eviction. This is something that we have to face. It's impacting our community members every single day. As our city staff person mentioned, eviction is the #1 cause of homelessness. So this is something, as we work to address literally unhoused people, we want to help prevent people from becoming unhoused, which is why our general government committee is looking at creating a fund so we can help people that are displaced from these rent increases, and why we've done a tremendous amount of work already, and we have more work to do. But I definitely think that this is the time, and I just truly appreciate you coming forward to tell these stories so we can hear them, so we can know what it's actually like for you. And I know that we have had discussions about a study session, hearing from our Land Use and Environment Committee. They've been hearing and discussing tenant protections that the 3 cities are talking about, and I think that they will have updates to bring forward to the full council. We also want to hear from our lobbyist to hear what they're planning for this upcoming session, and to hear, as a regional partner, we want to figure out what authority we have. We would like to look at this legislation that you provided graciously for us. But again, thank you so much. I know my colleagues will have a lot more to say, so I'll yield my time. Thank you.
Everybody's lined up here, so we're going to go to Councilmember Jones.
Thank you. Actually, Mayor Pro Tem Bateman, thank you. Thank you for your words. And thanks so much to those of you who came this evening to speak with us. It does make a difference to hear the stories and to know what our residents are going through. And I think what's important to remember is that you represent a much larger number of people who are in our community and experiencing the same sorts of challenges. In particular, I want to thank the work of Columbia Legal Services. We'll take a look at the materials you've brought. And Councilmember Bateman Mayor Pro Tem Bateman is exactly right. We have 2 of our committees are digging in on these issues and working hard to bring some things forward expeditiously. So thanks for that. I wanted to ask staff if you could give us an update. Allison Spector brought us some concerns having to do with business owners who were essentially leafleted, and actually some property damage associated with some pride flags. Is there an opportunity for an update on that?
I don't see our police rep here right now, so I'll have to get back to you on that. I know that we...
Chandra?
Chandra, are you there? Oh, there she is.
I remember Chandra being in charge of the Safe Places program, whether that's still up and going.
Last week, I was actually just going to forward the email to the city manager, and I can forward it to you guys. We became aware of the flyers that were posted downtown, and then later received information that there had been some property damage crimes associated with that. So we are investigating those, but I don't know that any arrests have been made on those as of late. But those are a priority to the police department, as they are the city, and obviously crimes, especially crimes directed at specific people in our community, will not be tolerated.
Thank you. Specifically, the request this evening was to reach out to business owners and establish the city's, take a position on the city's position on pride and human rights. And what I would like to do would be to bring back a recommendation to general government for a referral to see what could be done on that. If you're willing to take that, perhaps I need to bring you something in writing. So heads up. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Councilmember, who I have next here? Councilmember Gilman.
Thank you, Mayor Selby. I really appreciate what I heard tonight and your courage to come out and tell your stories. And as I was listening and thinking, I was also thinking that just in my day-to-day life, right? I checked in. I'm a carpenter, and I checked in with 3 carpenter friends. I spent Friday morning with a buddy who lives in a camp trailer in the side of somebody's house, and that's just the reality of what he's found. I checked in with a sister carpenter who lives in a van, and then I have a brother carpenter who's the mayor of Burien, and he got out ahead of us in a few weeks ago, passing a rental housing registration program that applies to all non-owner occupied housing. And then last night, they passed a suite of renter protections. So I'm kind of feeling the fire underneath me that I know that we're doing study. We've been doing study for months. We have our regional governments are also interested, and they're looking at this. But I'm anxious to find something, and I don't like having Mayor Jimmy Mata of Burien get out ahead of us. So there you go.
Thank you. Councilmember Parsley.
I sat here and I'm trying to articulate, and being the introvert, I'll probably figure this out on the way home. What I can say is I feel your emotions. At one point in my life, I had to make a decision between rent and food. I chose rent because it was Montana in the winter, and you can't survive out in the woods in Montana at -50 at night. So I lived for 2 weeks with a bag of carrots and a chunk of cheddar cheese. So I do know how close I came to being in the woods in Montana. I do understand that, and it's a scary, scary place. And when you end up being out in the woods in Olympia or in an RV or in a car, it's a really horrible place to be. I think this council and this city has done a phenomenal job in the year and some months that we've been working, but we have a long ways to go. And now we need to really pivot to keeping people in their homes and getting them back to the houses, because that's how we correct our problems. I will look at anything the Columbia Legal Services brings us. And I would actually go one step further and say that we have a set of renter rights that we have gone through at land use, and we have labeled them green light, yellow light, and red light. I would say we need to bring those green lights to the council as a full consideration, because there is nothing that the staff figured out, nor the committee, that there was a problem with passing these green light renter protections. You want to get the Burien? Let's look at these green lights. Let's get Tumwater. Let's get Lacey. And why are we waiting when we have a whole set of these renters protections? Why aren't we bringing those to council? Let's work on the yellow and red and bring the green to council, and get Tumwater and Lacey to bring the green to council. They have them too.
Thank you. Councilmember Cooper.
Thank you, Mayor Selby. Thank you for everyone that came out. Your stories are important, as my colleagues have said before me. I'd invite you, a lot of you that were here to talk about landlord-tenant stuff tonight weren't here at the very, very beginning of the meeting when Carrie Retlin talked about the work we're doing, and I'd encourage you to go back and watch that couple of minutes, so because it won't be restated at this point, but it's a body of work that's pretty big. In fact, I served on a committee, I think 2.5 years ago, an ad hoc committee to start this conversation for the city of Olympia with 2 council members who are no longer here. And so that's how long we've been having it. Unfortunately, we've had this massive growth in homelessness at the same time, and have, as was implied or indicated, really kind of shifted into that Band-Aid work for a while, and all of us feel the anxiety around renter protections and rent and our housing inventory. We have an unhealthy housing market in the city of Olympia, as you all have said. And I think all of us are losing sleep about that. In fact, I'm pretty certain that all of us are losing sleep about that. And so keep telling your stories. It's really important that our community understand that Olympia, more so than anywhere else in the county, there's more people by percentage of household that are living paycheck to paycheck than anywhere else in Thurston County. Like 45% are struggling to get by every single month when you look at what it actually costs to live. And it's unacceptable, but it's also what's driving this homelessness crisis. You know, there's in every population, there's mental illness, there's substance abuse. In fact, there's people overdosing in our neighborhoods, in houses, every single day. This is not a drug and alcohol problem. This is not a mental illness problem. This is a money problem. And so our, city, big business that used to be in our community used to say, it's the water, it's the money. And until we figure out as a society how we're going to take care of each other, then our problems will continue to grow. And I don't believe that we're anywhere near as bad as they're going to get. The last comment I'll make is around the pride flag notices in the window. That's totally unacceptable, and I'm not willing to be nice to you if I find out who you are. In fact, I went and put my pride flag back on my house as soon as I heard about it, and I'm a white cisgender male. And I hope that everyone will put their pride flags up. And if I were responsible for this city single-handedly, I would put a pride flag on the city hall for the next 365 days. No writing needed. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Rollins.
Thank you. I don't have much to add after hearing from the colleagues. I really appreciate everyone coming out, telling your stories. Washington Can for the organizing, because it's a really heavy time in our community. Most people that I know and I'm close with are part of what I've heard called the precariat, like very just the paycheck to paycheck, paying high portions of our income to rent. I'm also a renter as well. About 2/3 of my income right now go to my rent. And so I feel a lot of urgency. I appreciate the work that's been done by this council and by this institution on this issue. But what gives me hope is people finding each other, and because that's how major change are made. And it's really, really heavy to sit with the fact that we're in this situation because of the very structures that are set up to transfer wealth up to people that are already wealthy on the backs of regular people. And it's a tall order to change, but it happens when people come together, and we're seeing that tonight. And I really appreciate that. I look forward to looking at the legislation language provided by Washington Can and Columbia. Now, at agenda setting today, we were talking about potentially a study session where we can hear everything in one place on October 29th. Is that a go?
So I talked to Kerry Retland about that, and if we want some statewide perspective he had 2 or 3 groups he'd want to invite. Kerry can share what he knows on the 29th, but if we want some more perspective on statewide stuff, he's proposing a later date, not yet set, but he really felt there's a lot of information that he's not privy to. I can't remember the names of the organizations he mentions, so on the 29th, you get what you got tonight with a little more flavor, but if we have more time, we can get you more information.
And maybe Washington could be one of those. I know they provide information to cities, particularly about the legislative landscape. So
One was the Washington Housing Alliance and low-income housing. Yeah, so he's got some context, but he doesn't have all the information. So if we had more time, we kind of bring those people to the table also to help inform the council about what's going on.
Well, and I'm interested in hearing the green light, yellow, red that you guys went through land use, and as well, looking at what Tumwater and Lacey are, I mean, it seems like to have the biggest impact. That's also what makes it more complicated is when we try to do it regionally, because then it slows everybody's, motion down because it's so hard to get all the councils together, number one, and then to draft something. But that's the long range goal, is to have Lacey and Tumwater have the same rules that we do, so there's certainty across the region, for everybody. So, but in lieu of that, I think we'll look at scheduling with Carrie and bringing your group in and some of the other folks that are dealing with the legislation that's working in other communities. And I don't want Burien beating us either. So anyhow, they already did. Wasn't happy about it. All right.
can I just
One more?
Can I finish? As was mentioned, general government is also, our committee, general government committee with the council is also looking at possibilities for tenant relocation assistance, and there's different models for doing that. So more to come on that. And then to address Allison Spector's concern about the downtown businesses being targeted about the pride flags. I'm glad to hear that it's being investigated, and I saw that that right away. I just want to really compliment and lift up the LGBTQ community that's organized. I was out at Arts Walk on Friday night, which is right after this vandalism occurred, and who did I see but 3 Pride volunteers that were standing outside of the salon that had their windows broken, just to keep an eye on things, because that's one more example of people coming together and protecting each other, which is ultimately what we have to lean on a lot of times. I also know of 2 businesses that did not previously have pride flags in their windows that opted to display them because they didn't want to back down to fear. So I appreciate that about our community. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. I think we haven't even gotten to our consent calendar yet, and we've been here 2 hours, but this has been great conversation. And thank you for, having the courage to show up a lot. I know a lot of you are fresh faces in here we've not heard from before, so thank you for sharing your stories. It takes a lot of courage. With that, I need a motion to approve tonight's consent calendar.
So second.
All right. I just want to note that item 4J, 5 tonight, was it 5J? That we pulled. Are there any other questions, comments, or polls for this evening? All right. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We have a consent calendar that has passed. We are now on to council reports, since we have no other business on tonight's agenda. So I'm going to pass on my mayor's report and go down to the right and have Councilmember Parsley. Do you have a report? Councilmember Parsley?
I'm sorry, I heard the mayor's report first.
I said I don't have anything for tonight's report.
I have 2 things to report. Reporting on September 25th's Joint Animal Service Commission's committee meeting, where we had, among other things, an update on where we are on bringing the shelter up to current standards. They've gotten the University of Wisconsin Veterinary School plus the ASPCA to come and do a free inspection to see what we need to adjust and improve on to be able to provide current standards, 2019 standards for shelters. We also are going to be hiring an architect that works with shelters to be able to help us with a feasibility study on these potential changes. Unfortunately, when we went to the budget, it looks like some of the things that we are going to need to change will be reflected in an increased assessment. However, Steve Hall, along with other city managers and staff, are going to be having a joint meeting to see what we can do for the 2020 budget.
Right, and that happens tomorrow night. We're meeting with Sarah tomorrow night.
Very good. And I would just want to make clear, the increase recommended assessment may not happen this year, but it is simply to bring the shelter up to standards. It is not to improve it and expand it. It's to bring it to standards. The second meeting I attended as liaison is the Parking and Business Assessment District. They had a long conversation about their budget, and they also presented a process for being able to get funds from the PBIA, and they've upgraded the policy on that, and you can find that hopefully very shortly on the website if you are such a nonprofit that would like to get some funding from the Parking Business Assessment District.
All right, thank you. Any questions for Councilmember Partially? Just for clarification, it's the Parking Business Improvement Area, just in case people look for that other name. All right, thank you for that. Councilmember Gilman.
Just one item, Intercity Transit met last week, and through a combination of baby boomer retirement and Proposition 1 staffing up, they have made 102 hires so far in 2019. That is dramatic. So say hello to the new driver of the vehicle you hop on to. Riding the bus. A lot of new faces out there. One item that I think it's important to bring back to the city, and that's that we had a discussion about the Centennial Station, the Amtrak depot. And I think that we'll be hit up in the near future here, that in spite of it being volunteer staffed, it's just not keeping up with keeping the building open. So that's coming our way. Not a surprise.
All right. Any questions for Councilmember Gilman? Maybe for the, oh, did you have a question?
No.
Oh, City Manager Steve, didn't we used to contribute to the Centennial Station, or do we still have a?
Yeah, we still do. We still do. I think our share is about $11,000 a year, so all the jurisdictions participate in the funding, but those are expenses more related to utilities and building upkeep. I think all the staffing, I think, are volunteers, I believe, out there. Yeah.
So if I may, the issue is repainting when there's been some challenges with the siding material and coating sticking to it and being due for HVAC and re-roofing. And so some capital projects on that building beyond chipping in on the utility costs.
Okay. Yeah. Well, thanks for the heads up. All right. Councilmember Jones.
Thank you. I just have a short report on the October 4th meeting of the Thurston Regional Planning Council. The first thing is we had a great report from the chair of the Transportation Policy Board, Mayor Andy Ryder from Lacey. And we are trying to bring these two organizations closer together and make sure that we're pulling in the same direction. One of the things that we're looking at closely right now is the criteria that we use for project selection. So this has to do with the distribution of state and federal transportation funds and the criteria that we use for that distribution process. We also received a report on I-5 modeling. We're in the middle of some modeling work on Interstate 5 as it moves through Thurston County from Mounts Road all the way down to Tumwater. I would just say that the most difficult portion of that is, you might guess, the interchange with Interstate 101, State Route 101. And there will be some significant work associated with that in the years ahead. We had a discussion of legislative priorities. Those will be coordinated with other jurisdictions and also at a county level with, and that's essentially it. But more to come on legislative priorities.
All right, any questions for Councilmember Jones? All right, Mayor Pro Tem Bateman.
Thank you, Mayor Selby. Nothing to report.
Councilmember Rollins.
Thank you. 2 items to report on. Last week, Thurston 911 Communications met on October 2nd, and the big item was that we heard again from the county manager of Lewis County about their desire to work with Thurston County on a regionalization of dispatching services. And the Lewis County authorities and the main first responder agencies have agreed to pay for a feasibility study about what that might look like. And so we got updated on that, and we authorized the director to participate with limited staff time to help out with that study. A lot of the information that is needed from TCOM is already compiled for other reports that TCOM needs to provide to the state. So that prospect is chugging along. And then general government met September 25th. We heard the issue of potential tenant relocation programs, as I mentioned earlier, and the main takeaway is there's different ways of structuring those programs and some questions about what's allowable under state law. And so Carrie's going to be bringing more to us at a later date. Additionally, we heard that we had our first briefing of the upcoming CDBG program year process, and more to come on that as well. But we're in addition to the new program year coming up, we also have significant funding needing to be reallocated from the current program year because Salvation Army is essentially releasing the money that we had committed to them for their project. So that is likely going to be coming to us concurrently. And in fact, I think that kicks off at a council meeting later this month. So more to come. And then lastly, our volunteer commissions and boards are actively recruiting new members. So if you have an interest in the Heritage Commission or the way that utilities are funded and structured at the city, or I can't remember all the openings, but there's openings on several of the commissions, and there's more information on the website. It's a great way to not only serve and be able to advise council on relevant policy, but also learn a little bit more about how the city organization works. So look forward to seeing applications coming in, which we interview for those in General Government Committee. So that's my report.
Excellent. Any questions for Councilmember Rollins? All right, Councilmember Cooper.
Thank you, Mayor Selby. I have a few things this evening. So first is the Finance Committee meeting from September. We actually spent some time looking at our investment policy and made some recommendations to update it based on current law. We also had our second meeting with the school district talking about impact fees in downtown. If you're not aware, the school board is considering recommending that we institute impact fees in the downtown for schools. Right now, there's a 100% discount on that impact fee. And so we're having an ongoing conversation and dialogue about different approaches and definitely leaning hard on them to not surprise us right before our budget, but to lean into this with some sort of phase-in approach. So ongoing conversations there. The last piece about the meeting was we heard a report from Stacey Ray about the really strong set of results they received in the Engage Olympia process around the upcoming budget. I don't have the exact numbers, but there's a great presentation if you want to check in with Stacey to see a really, really high number of responses. And across the boards, I think a good indication of where we are as a city, even some possibilities of places we might want to tweak some of our performance measures to get more in alignment with what the community is saying. But the Finance Committee wants to recommend that we go out and validate that with a statistical significant survey. And the last time that we did the one was in 2017, and we'd have a work plan to do one every 2 years. So we'd like to suggest that we allocate $25,000 of council goal money, and staff would get this under contract and work with us on the questions and get something launched in early 2020. The current council goal money balance is $102,499. The citizen survey would be $25,000. The staff will recommend that we carry forward $50,000 of that council goal money to be used to fund the Leadership and Governance Committee of the Capitol Lake Environmental Impact Statement process. I'll give you more details about that in the budget process later. And then that would remain, if you agree to allocate this 25, that would leave $27,499 left in council goal money for 2019. So I'm asking you for consensus to move forward, have staff move forward on a survey.
It's just point of clarification. So if the survey were done the first quarter of 2020, it would impact our 2021 budget.
But we need to get under contract, and the money's already allocated in the goal money. So we can do it now. We can pay it. We can get it in this budget appropriated to the source.
I got that piece, but this survey would be in the first quarter of 2020 is when we do the survey?
Yes.
That's when we conduct it, and the survey's broad-based. We'll ask questions about satisfaction with existing surveys and other questions, so yeah.
I remember the one we did in 17, so it would be broader than just budget priorities.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, it's really to look at the whole array of performance indicators that are on our dashboard.
Okay, so it does tie back toward it.
Yes, 100% ties to the dashboard, and then I'll lift up a comment that we've said at Finance multiple times, and that Councilmember Bateman reminded me of this evening, is that we want to have an emphasis with our contractor that we want to do whatever we can to increase the number of renters that are responding to that survey, so that we can try to get a little more calibrated to the community. So so that's the end of my report on finance. If there it will be a good time to stop for questions, because I have another.
Okay, did you have a finance committee? Okay.
Thank you. As a member of the Finance Committee, I support this use of the council go money for this survey. I just want to emphasize we continue to struggle to obtain feedback from surveys from renters. This is a perennial challenge that we experience. And if we're going to be spending $25,000 on a consultant that's going to be giving us a statistically significant survey, I would really like to emphasize that in that contract that we have an expectation that they achieve measurable results for getting us feedback from renters.
And how are we going to dictate what that means, measurable results?
Well, last time Elway did a poll for us, they did not achieve a very high a percentage of feedback. So I'd like them to
double it, or I mean, do you want to pick a number?
I would think that we could have a conversation with them before we do the RF or the contract or the RFP and ask them what they think is possible and really emphasize. I feel like we said that last time, and the number they came back with was just dismal. And it's 2019. We're a majority renter city, and we should, if we're going to be spending the money, expect that and get that.
It has been higher every time we've done the survey, so I know they're probably been thinking about it for 2 years.
Can I make one comment on the Finance Committee? Because I may not be here for that meeting on the 28th. I will be trying very hard to call in. I'll be in a different time zone by quite a bit. That I would ask that to have Leonard present to you what happened at the Olympia School Board in terms of the impact fees. They were willing to work with us, but only so far. But I think they're willing to match whatever the city does in terms of affordable housing.
Okay, all right. So, Councilmember Jones?
Well, just real quickly, with regard to the survey and representation of renters, it seems to me as though the objective is to reflect our community and to have the same percentage of renters represented in the survey as we have in our city. I don't know whether that's achievable, but I think that that's the objective.
That's what I'm hearing as well. Councilmember Gilman?
So I would urge to not automatically go back to the same firm in Bellevue that everybody always uses for polling unless they have recent experience where they had dramatically different results in the sample they pulled. Otherwise, I wouldn't spend our dime there. And then I have a question, Chair Cooper, about the school district conversation. How does that impact the budget, whether the school district assesses impact fees or not on a project? I don't understand the connection.
So, okay, so it doesn't impact our budget, but we are the only entity authorized to collect impact fees in the city of Olympia. So the school district creates its capital facilities plan, sets a capital budget rate, and passes it on to a recommendation. We then essentially adopt their capital facilities plan within ours and bring their impact fee bill to the property owners. And then we pass that on to them. So the budget impact for us is passed through, but they can't do it on their own. Yeah. So do we have consensus?
Yep. Yes, I think we have consensus.
Okay, thank you very much. And I'll talk to staff a little more about those concerns. I do think that we've had exponentially better survey results every time we've performed one. So the other meeting, I think this is important, but not needing an action tonight. The Regional Housing Council met last week, and I can best categorize that as a uncomfortable and not very fun event. After months of work and working on a site plan and coming up with operating dollars, the county came back with a budget for capital improvements, frontage improvements to make the site usable for everything from grading to paths and lighting of $600,000 to $1 million, and said that it would be at a minimum 4 to 5 months before they could accomplish that work. They also let us know that that site is where they store the sand and brine for winter for that end of the county. And it would cost $80,000 to relocate that operation for their transportation department. And they have been looking for sites for actually multiple years and have no site that they could possibly find so far to use. Was really discouraged for that late, those late numbers, especially given that it was my understanding there was a comparison of the feasibility around 2 different sites the county owned, and this was chosen as the most feasible. And in my understanding, primarily because it didn't likely need grading like the other side that was hilly. And now we're saying, hearing it's in the bottom and it gathers water every time it rains in the low point. So we got through our frustration in the moment. I continue to be frustrated, but I think that this regional partnership is more important at the moment than getting a 40 tent mitigation site done regionally. We did essentially say that we would like to convert this project to more of a permanent project, doing the right kind of site plan, looking at either tiny homes or modular homes. And that was what Carrie implied that we would look at as a group, is going after the $10 million pilot project around modular homes as a group, and that will come out soon for that site. And so I think the cool part about that is Keith Staley on our staff has been really digging in on modular homes and has that skill set at the moment, and we'll look at bringing that to the table. So that piece on that site slowed down, but the other thing that I think you'll probably hear more about next week is that we're looking at a total net loss in shelter capability for this winter, with 3 really significant things. We know that there's issues with the Salvation Army. They will only be able to provide 30 cold weather beds this winter, which is down significantly from what we contracted for and what they have been doing in the past. I also, Keely Marino told us that the Union Gospel Mission, so they typically will have about 60 beds throughout the year, and then they expand their capacity to around 80 for cold weather. They're already running at about 76 people per night. So that facility is full, and it really hasn't gotten cold yet. And you add to that the main daytime, not officially, but really it happens to be the unofficial social service center of Olympia, the library in our downtown will be closing for the bulk of the winter to do some remodels, as I understand it, that are associated with shelving and desks, not really structural remodels. So the Regional Housing Council asked Keely if we could think about using the operating money for the mitigation site that we had pulled together for a year. We're essentially delaying the project, so looking at 5 or 6 months of operating money available to respond to a recommendation from the Cold Weather Task Force. So we don't want to get into the weeds about cold weather shelter and try to look at that entire big picture. We want to wait for a recommendation from them, and then depending on the timing, either the Regional Housing Council will bring that recommendation back to the cities, or the Cold Weather Task Force will bring that recommendation back to the cities. Right now, I think the timing is that the 17th is the Regional Housing Council meeting, and I think the 18th might be the Cold Weather Task Force meeting. So you might not have a hard recommendation, but that was the general consensus of the group after what was a pretty frustrating meeting, but still a commitment to work together.
Thank you for your work on that and that update. Look forward to hopefully having a plan here pretty soon. I was disappointed to hear. Anybody else? All right, City Manager report.
Just one quick thing to add on to Council Member Cooper's report. Next week, we have Keely Marino from Thurston County talking about the county's 5-year plan to address homelessness. Based on Councilmember Cooper's request, I've asked her also to speak about what's going on with the Hazardous Weather Task Force, a little more what Councilmember Cooper just described. But then, as he said, the recommendation won't come from them until the 18th, it sounds like. And other than that, I have no report. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any questions for the city manager? All right, so this is where I get to have fun with our next two items. We're effectively finished with our regular business meeting, so we are going to, at this point, recess to closed session to discuss a matter related to labor negotiations. No decisions will be made. The meeting is expected to last no longer than 15 minutes, and the council will then recess immediately following that closed session into an executive session to discuss a matter related to real estate and actual and potential litigation. No decisions will be made. The meeting is expected to last no longer than 45 minutes, and the council will adjourn immediately following the executive session.